So last week, Karen, with the help of Katie Hayes, shared with us the story of Abraham and Isaac. How God commanded Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac as a burnt offering. This son that he and Sarah had waited for literally a century to bear. This son that was to provide a lineage of offspring that God had promised that would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Isaac was the dream that they had been waiting for, and now God was calling Abraham to sacrifice him. Abraham trusted God and took Isaac up on Mount Moriah. He prepared the altar, he laid down the wood, and just as Isaac was beginning to wonder where this sacrifice was, Abraham tied him to the altar. Not what Isaac was prepared for when his dad invited him on a walk that morning, for certain. As Abraham raised the knife to slay his son, God stops Abraham. God commends Abraham for fearing God and being willing to give up his only son, and then God provides a ram in the thicket. Abraham encountered God that day, but Isaac did too. And we don't really know what happened between God and Isaac. We don't hear a lot from Isaac for a little while after that. In fact, when we meet him next, he is 40 years old, right as he meets his future wife, Rebekah, for the first time, a marriage arranged by Abraham. Isaac does have some sort of relationship with God, despite this traumatic incident from his childhood, because we see him praying to God and raising his kids to know God. So Isaac and Rebekah give birth to twins, Jacob and Esau. They have an epic rivalry that begins at delivery as the younger, smooth-skinned Jacob grasps the heel of the older, hairy Esau on his way out of the birth canal. Jacob is a scheming mama's boy who tricks his older brother out of his inheritance rights and deceives his aging father into compliance. But God has a soft spot for him. And so Jacob grows into the unlikely hero of Israel's origin stories. And Jacob has two encounters with God. The first happens right after Jacob flees his home, having provoked the rage of his brother Esau when he stole the blessing. He heads to his uncle's home across the river, and on his journey, the sun begins to set, and he comes to a place and sets up camp for the night. He finds a smooth stone, just the right height so he won't get a crick in his neck, and he sets it under his head as a pillow and lays down to sleep. He's been running all day, so he falls asleep quickly, and when he does, he has a dream. Jacob sees a stairway or a ladder. The stairway was set on the ground, and as Jacob looked up the ladder, he could see that it reached all the way up past the skies into heaven, as far up as Jacob could see. And as he watched the ladder, he saw God's angels. They were going up the stairway all the way to heaven and coming down the stairway back to earth. Jacob watched these angels in his dream going up and down, connecting heaven and earth. And suddenly in his dream, God was right before him. God spoke to Jacob and said, "I am God, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac. I am giving the ground on which you are sleeping to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as the dust of the earth. They'll stretch from west to east and from north to south. All of the families of earth will bless themselves in you and your descendants. Yes, I will stay with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this very ground. I will not leave you until I've done everything that I promised you." Jacob woke up from his sleep, and he said, "Surely the Lord was in this place, and I was not aware of it." Jacob had encountered God. "Incredible," he whispered. "This place is holy." This is God's house, the gate of heaven. So Jacob woke up early the next morning. He took that stone that he had used as a pillow and stood it up as a memorial pillar. And Jacob poured oil on it and called the place Bethel, God's house. And Jacob made a vow, if God stands with me and protects me on this journey on which I'm setting out, if God keeps me in food and clothing and brings me back in one piece to this place, this God will be my God. This stone that I've set up as a memorial pillar will mark this place as a place where God lives. And everything you give me, I'll return 1/10 to you, Lord. Jacob continues his journey and arrives at his uncle's home. He falls in love with his uncle's beautiful daughter, Rachel, who also has a complicated relationship with her own sibling, Leah. Complications and trickery arise, and Jacob unknowingly marries Leah, then must work for his uncle in order to also marry Rachel. You have to smile at the irony of a man who tricked his own brother for a blessing, who is now married to 2 sisters at odds with each other because he was tricked himself. And as the years pass, I wonder how many times Jacob replayed that dream in his head. God had promised to bring him home. When would it happen? 2 decades pass. Jacob has 12 sons and a daughter. Esau is still back home, building an army. Jacob is building his flocks because God blesses Jacob and makes him prosperous. But eventually, Jacob decides that he's done working for his uncle/father-in-law. Better off risking an angry brother with an army than a father-in-law who can't be trusted. So Jacob gathers his huge family and their livestock and their belongings and leads them into the desert. He decides that now is the time to return home to Canaan. Perhaps he felt strong in his own success, or maybe he finally felt sorry for tricking his father and brother. Maybe he misses his brother, misses his homeland. We don't know why this is the time, but I can't imagine his anxiety. What will he find when he arrives back? Is he trading one bad situation for another? Will God keep that promise from so many years ago? I will give you this ground you sleep on, God had told him. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust in the desert. I will stay with you. I will protect you. I will never leave you. Jacob sends a message to Esau that he's coming home, and he gets a message back that Esau and 400 men are coming to meet him. Jacob is nervous, so he sends his servants and flocks of animals ahead in 2 groups to Esau, hoping to pacify him. He sends gifts of sheep and goats and camels and cows, hoping for the best. And finally, he sends his wives and his sons across the river with the rest of his possessions, but he stays behind, one night, all alone in the middle of the wilderness. And that evening, Jacob encounters a mysterious stranger in the middle of the night, Jacob's second encounter with God. As he camps alone by the river, Jacob is roused by what appears to be a strong man who is intent on a fight. The 2 of them wrestle all night long, a second wrestling match for Jacob, much like the one he had with his brother Esau in his mother's womb. No space between them, gasping for breath, muscles strained, sweat dripping down their bodies. One of them gains the upper hand for a moment, only to lose it the next, all night long. Dawn finally breaks, and he realizes he can't get the best of Jacob, so the man throws Jacob's hip out of joint. "Let me go," he tells Jacob. But here's the thing. Sometime during this wrestling match, Jacob has realized that this is no man. This is the very presence of God. his second encounter with God, both here in the wilderness. But last time, Jacob did not realize he had met God until he woke up, and he wasn't about to make that mistake again. And so Jacob makes his own demand of God. I am not letting you go until you bless me, Jacob tells him. What is your name? The man asked. Jacob, he replied. Not anymore, the man said. From now on, you will be called Israel. You have wrestled with God and with humans, and you have overcome. What is your name? Jacob asks. Why would you want to know my name? The man replied, and he blessed Jacob right there. And then he was gone. Jacob found himself alone again. Jacob named the place Peniel God's face because he said, I saw God face to face and I lived to tell the story. Jacob sat by the stream and saw his own reflection. No longer Jacob, Israel. He had begged God for a blessing and God gave him a name, a place to belong. He didn't run away this time. He had wrestled until he got what he was searching for. The sun was up now, and as he stood to leave this place, to cross the river and join his family and go back to Canaan, ooh, ouch. Pain shot from his hip all the way to his foot, and he limped away, carrying the story of his new name with every step. And because the Bible ends the story with a random tidbit, I will share it with you too. To this day, this is why the Israelites don't eat the hip muscle, because Jacob's hip was thrown out of joint. The first time Jacob encounters God, God comes to Jacob in a dream. And when Jacob wakes up, he says, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. Even when Jacob didn't know it, God was already there, making the secular sacred, turning a rock pillow into a pillar to mark this encounter with God. And so Jacob leaves, trusting that God will fulfill the promises that God made. But Jacob didn't make that mistake the second time he encounters God. Jacob has spent his whole life in a struggle, struggling with his brother in the womb, pulling at his heel to hold Esau back, rushing to get to Isaac first so that he could get the blessing, running away from home to escape his angry brother, struggling to keep two unhappy sister wives as happy as he could, one who yearned for a child and one who yearned to be loved. Struggling with 20 years of labor with his father-in-law, struggling to know how to return home when you are the reason you had to leave in the first place. So when Jacob finds himself in a wrestling match that lasts for hours while he's camping all alone by that river, he doesn't make the mistake that he does the first time he encountered God. This time, Jacob recognizes God before God has left. This time, Jacob is done struggling. He demands a blessing from God. Not something that will happen in the future. Jacob is willing to wrestle for what he desires, and he won't stop until he gets it. And surprisingly, God relents. This blessing is delivered as a name change, no longer Jacob, but Israel. He struggles with God. The fight ends, but not before Jacob has a hip injury that will make him limp for the rest of his life. He has struggled with God and with humans, and Jacob has overcome. And Israel's history goes out from here. Jacob makes peace with his brother. His 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. And now Israel also carries the name given in this encounter with God. They struggle with God and will overcome. They are not a people at the top of the world. This chosen people will wander and struggle with God. And this image of Jacob, of Israel, of a nation as one who will encounter God and emerge from that wrestling match with a limp and a blessing is a beautiful image. When Jacob demands a blessing, he is given one, and his blessing is this, that he will struggle with God and will overcome. We don't encounter God so that we will know we are right. We don't encounter God so that we can win the argument or know the true meaning of Scripture or get easy answers. We don't encounter God so that we can escape or ignore the reality of the world around us. Jacob's blessing is that his struggle is with God and he has overcome. We encounter God so that we can engage with God. We encounter God because we are looking for a better way to engage this world, to live lives of love. We encounter God for answers that will cause us to grow in God's image, no matter how painful that growth is. Because when you encounter God and ask for a blessing, you can't expect to leave the wrestling match untouched. And that is where the limp comes in. Your time wrestling with God will leave you with a limp. But a limp will slow you down. A limp will humble you. A limp will keep you from running too fast down that road that you are certain you should be on. A limp gives you time to listen, time to pay attention to the flowers along the way, time to ask questions, time to wait. A blessing and a limp. A struggle with God and a way to always carry that struggle. Our bodies remember the story of God when our minds forget. And I wonder if God is inviting us to wrestle with God too. Inviting us to stay with God through the long nights of our lives. We don't have to cheat or manipulate anything. God is not going to run away. Engage with me, God invites us. Hold on to me. I will chase you. Your struggle is not with this world anymore. It's with me. Be with me and I will struggle with you. Demand the blessing of God in your life. But be prepared to limp. Because when Jacob walked away, he was limping. Every step he took for the rest of his life, Jacob remembered who he was and who he had encountered. He remembered his name, his struggles with God with every step that he took. His body now told the story of his life-changing encounter with God for the rest of his life. And he knew from that day on that God was with him, even when he was not aware of it. As you encounter God, may you struggle with God and not let go until you get a blessing. May your limp remind you of who your God is with every step that you take. And may you trust that God is with you even when you are not aware of it. Amen.